I'm Jim Pilgrim. I work for T-Rex Solutions in Greenbelt, Maryland. And that's me. I'm a solutions architect and somebody who likes to figure out stuff with the cloud and infrastructure. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I'm not going to tell you how much over 20 years because, wow, that would, this guy's been around a long time. But from the days on the data center using an E4500 Sun server, and which cost $250,000, and trying to get it to work with Oracle RAC. So that should qualify me for having time in this. But the great thing now, so here we are with cloud, and I'm grateful that I have the opportunity at this point in my career to work in cloud. It's the most exciting time, the most satisfying time, the most challenging time, because we can do so much so quickly for our customers and help them solve problems we could never do before. So I have an agenda, straightforward agenda. We're going to talk about Microsoft's theme. We're going to talk about easy buttons that are already here, and this goes back to what we had talked about earlier with PASS. Defining easy for the agency. What does that mean? Because there is no one easy button. What does an easy cloud framework look like? And then we'll talk with some takeaways and then have your questions. But if anything comes up and I'm confusing, please let me know. Well, let's have that discussion now. I was hoping we would have a good discussion out of this information. So Microsoft, when I saw this, I said, wow, an easy button. And it talks about the pressures on all the agencies to get to the cloud. Get there. There's low-hanging fruit. Grab the low-hanging fruit and take it to the cloud. Do something. And I've been part of these projects, and it can be frustrating because the rush to do something, but not the plan to get it done and to scale it and to make it and to sustain it. So I learned how to do red projects. Anybody else here bail out red projects? Don't start. They'll know you can do it, and you'll end up taking them on. But what I got, the best lessons I got, I saw the patterns. Why is this happening? And how can I help fix this? And I joined T-Rex several months ago to help do that, to standardize this so that we can fix this, and that being successful is a result of having a plan to do it. But I have a lot of scars to get to this point, but that was the great thing. That was great because I learned from all of these other projects. And what I saw here was, well, there's not one easy button. In fact, there are a lot of easy buttons. And it's easy to take for granted the progress that just in the last 10 years. But if you look at software-defined network, if I had told you 10 years ago, February 2010, Azure was launched. 2009, auto-scaling by another cloud service provider, which will own this building, I think, at some point. Automation in 2010. 10 years, and cost and asset tracking, auto-scaling, multiple regions, being able to deploy in multiple regions, high-speed bandwidth, express route, a direct connect. Once I'm on that, I've got all the bandwidth I want. The CSP migration tools, which not only lets me push data and virtual machines to the cloud, but I can bring them back. So I'm not stuck there. I have access to all of that data, all of those virtual machines. The automation tools. If you have JSON and YAML, we can script everything. In fact, we want to script everything. We can do portability tools. So the Azure Recovery Manager. Now we can configure that in Azure. We can configure it in AWS. That application can move to Azure that fast. That's cloud portability. It's also disaster recovery. But so there's just so much of these easy buttons. And these easy buttons, what was exciting to me is that we can take those easy buttons, we can understand what the agency wants. That's the whole point of doing this. And we can create a hybrid cloud framework. So what do we need to know? Well, we talk about being CSP agnostic. What does that mean? Do they want to immediately use 2 CSPs or start with one and then move to another one? Or they want to use a certain application in Azure and then another application in another CSP? But we need to understand what CSP agnostic means to them. What does vendor agnostic mean? They may be using a vendor's technology on premises. They have to use it when they move to the cloud, but they don't want to use it long term. So let's make sure we have a plan to get out from under that vendor based on what our agency is asking for. Security. We want to know, what's your security? Are you doing policy-based security? How are you doing IAM? Do you encrypt everything? How do you do key management? Are you using user and roles? How many different security policies do you have? Can you document them? So show us, the more we can learn, the more we can focus on a policy-based security model. Availability. Do you have SLAs, SLOs, RTOs, and RPOs for DR? Again, if we know that, that's going to inform our architecture. Scalability. We couldn't do this before. Do you have traffic patterns that you've had to accommodate and you've overbuilt? And that's very common. You overbuild it because you have to. Now we can do auto-scaling. Do we need auto-scaling? What's cheaper? Overbuild or provide auto-scaling? But we have those options today. How are you doing operations and maintenance? Well, typically it's ServiceNow, BigFix, right? BMC, CA. What's the other ones? OpenView? I mean, there's just so many different versions of tools to do O&M. But we need to know, what tools are you using? What are the processes behind those tools? If we hope to have this hybrid cloud framework that abstracts all of this and we take a programmatic approach. And costs. I've been in the situation where I'm supposed to save 30% going to the cloud based on what's being spent today. And it's really difficult because the environment was built on an application-by-application basis. It's very difficult to find out, what does this cost? What we can do is I can tell you what it's going to cost you to move into the cloud and what it's going to cost you to scale when you're in the cloud. So I may not be able to tell you what you have to work on what you're spending today, but I can tell you what it's going to cost you. That's something, and then I can let you track that granularly exactly the way you want to. The way we're going to do this is do account management. So who has done account management strategy? Well, if you got to have multiple accounts, you got to have a plan. How are we going to have multiple accounts in each CSP so that we're dividing up all of those applications? And we're doing that in a methodical way. Because if we don't do that up front, it's very difficult, impossible with one CSP to move applications from one account to another. You can't just throw them all in one account. It'll be a mess very quickly. So we have to, and it's up to us on the contractor side to have a plan for that. Tagging. And another one that I get excited about, but is anybody interested in how tagging works at a CSP? And that's what tagging is awesome, because you can tag an asset, tag a resource, and I can track that a lot of different ways. I can use tagging for security. I can use tagging for configuration management, for costs, to know what my groups are doing. My CMDB will be up to date if I do this up front. It's just the planning we have to do to take advantage of what's there. The network design, how are we going to do consistent virtual management, the VPCs, the CIDR block plans, policy-driven security, enterprise architecture, all the things we have to plan to do, have to plan up front so that we can create a hybrid cloud framework. And it's a hybrid cloud framework that works for the agency. And our goal is for 80%, 75 to 80% of the work we do to be reused. Because I've seen this in the migrations I've been part of. 75 to 80% of what we do from migration to migration, application to application, is the same stuff. We're deploying virtual machines, we're data volumes, we're security groups and firewalls, and we can standardize that. We can automate it. We can script it. We want to. I don't want anybody going to the console, because something bad can happen if somebody's allowed to do something that we don't know they're doing. But that's the great thing, that 75 to 80%, because the action is in the 15, 20, 25% that's unique to that agency, that's about the mission. But in my experience, a lot of contractors start from scratch. That's what happens. And when you start from scratch each time, you're having to build the whole thing, the whole tower. And without that reuse, and you're building the whole tower, your smartest people are building from scratch each time. And we need those smartest people focused on that 15 to 20 to 25% that is mission critical, and where they really need the cloud to work. You can't do that if you don't have this hybrid cloud framework approach, because we're just overwhelmed with that 75 to 80% that has to be done. We want to script that out. We want to take a FedRAMP type approach when it comes to ATOs. We've done this at Census, and we have, you can see here, reduced ATO from 250 to 60 days. How do we do that? Well, we have the FedRAMP boundary. We take machine images and we have them authorized. We take a building block approach. So if we have enough of these critical machine images that we've had authorized, and we add those because of enterprise architecture that we've defined with our customer, we can take applications, build them up with the building blocks, and it's only, say the code are possibly a couple of workloads that need to be ATO. All the rest of it's done because we've extended the boundary. And if we take that approach, ATOs become predictable. They're less drama. We can scale because we're not worried, oh, what's ATO going to do to us? Well, that's a big benefit, but it requires the enterprise architecture. It requires being able to automate and to script so that when we change something about a group of workloads, we can show the team, hey, this is what we did. We changed this on these workloads. This is all we changed. This is what needs to be considered for authorization. So there's a lot of planning that has to go into this, but by doing that planning, we're able to be cloud agnostic. We can be vendor agnostic. And because we've got this 75 to 80%, and that 75 to 80% today that's supporting that 15 to 20, 25%, well, that 15 to 20 to 25% is going to move into the commodity area before too long, because this is going to continue to advance in new capabilities. Over 1,000 changes last year in Azure, and at least as many in that other CSP that I think, did I say they're going to own this building? I didn't know, but they'll probably, but they're going to, that's what they're going to have. I spend more time on YouTube and on the Azure site just keeping up with the changes. We can't keep up with that unless we have a plan to do that. And this is the way, that hybrid cloud framework that lets the agency add new technology without having to start from scratch. That flexibility, that being able to make good decisions about technology without having to worry we have to start from the very beginning again. So this is an approach that we believe in, that we see can pay great dividends. That the key for us is to do, we as contractors, to do that work up front, that we bring value and we show up. We're ready to go. We bring these solutions so that we don't expect our customers to do. We're the professionals. We ought to be doing this. And then we can collaborate. We can get the information they need, and together we can do some great work. And we have the great buttons that already exist. So our takeaways, the easy buttons exist. They're the building blocks. They're phenomenal. We couldn't believe we would have those 10 years ago. And there are going to be more of them. that the applications, because we take this approach, the applications inherit the security, the scalability, the availability. And that's that inheritance that allows us to accelerate the ATO process. The DevOps and DevSecOps, and those, you hear about that a lot. Not a lot of groups are the teams, development teams are mature enough, or the cultural changes aren't there, but if we have the capabilities, we can introduce them as the teams are ready for them. But the capabilities are there. And we're in alignment with the customer when it comes to, oh, what else do we want to do in O&M? What else do you want to do to streamline? We know this hybrid cloud framework will allow the agency to respond to the changes in technology. Everybody wants to talk about AI and blockchain. All the cool kids are doing that. I really want to be with the cool kids. But I have to be down there on the ground, getting these applications, this existing environments over to the cloud and making that work so that all that other cool stuff will have a reason for being. So I'll likely be on the ground doing this the rest of my career, but that's the work. That's the cool stuff to do, is in solving these problems that have been around for a long time. And when people complain about, well, how is this working in the government? Say, well, I'm part of the solution here. And that's really cool to be part of that. We're figuring it out, and we work with some fabulous people that also want to figure it out. So that's my hybrid cloud framework session today. We could go on for a long time, or I could, and maybe we can hear, or we can talk afterwards. So any questions? Yes, sir.
What's the cost to go? I mean, for how you call it? What's the cost for a company between 25 to 30 to go to the cloud? Because you talk about the cost.
So you ask about the cost of a company 25 to 30 to go to the cloud, and if I thought about a company that size, the first thing I'd ask about is how are you doing Office and email? And so the first thing would be Office 365, and you do that in Azure, and you're going to pay on a per person basis, and that's the best thing I could do for you, because I know you're going to get all of Office 365. You're going to have SharePoint. Your email is going to be there. You know it's going to be secure. You don't have to worry about all the Active Directory stuff. You're 25 or 30 people, that's the way to go. And it's going to put you in a much better position to do something else, like help your customers especially, because you'll have that strong foundation of Office, SharePoint, and email.
When I talk about the 75% reuse, so when I talk about reuse, we talk about framework reuse, technology stack reuse, some tools reuse.
Well, so our approach is, with regard to reuse, is having the standard images. So we're going to have if we're running on Linux, we're running Oracle on Linux. We're building it. We're not using a managed Oracle PaaS service. We're going to have an image that we've already built. It's already hardened. For Linux, it's running Oracle. We've got that authorized. We're going to script this out. We're going to automate the deployment of an environment that needs this Oracle image. That's what we're going to pull. And we're going to continue to read now. Because we're automating it and we're calling an image, we can modify that image. Maybe we're using a new version of Oracle. We can call that new image by changing the script. And that's all we have to do is change the script. It's going to call that image. We can, if we want to increase the compute capacity, for example, we want to change the compute capacity for an entire class of applications. We change that script, it'll go out and it'll build that, and we can, in a matter of really hours at most, we can rebuild that whole environment. And again, if we've approached this from an ATO perspective, the building block approach, then we're only talking about the deltas, and we can document the deltas because we're script-based. Yes, sir?
You seem to have a very pragmatic approach to cloud migration that involves refactoring systems to work better in the cloud, to be more efficient, more repeatable. How do you tackle a situation or a scenario where a customer just wants to lift and shift everything they've got just as it is and shove it in, let's say Azure, not that other cloud provider?
So he asked about lift and shift. I still want to have a plan. I still want to talk about account, how we're going to set up the account, how are we going to tag it, what's our security policy and all. I'm glad you asked it, because I think lift and shift gets a bad rap. If I look at most environments that look at their data center, it's magnetic disk, right? How much solid state is there? Is the network really, is it a great network? What kind of servers are they running on? Are they recent? What's the capacity load on them? They're typically overutilizing the memory and not enough of the CPUs. Overbuilt CPUs, not enough memory, again and again and again. So how well are the volumes? Are they fast? If I move this over to Azure, I'm getting solid state drives. It's going to be faster. I'm getting not only faster virtual machines because the hardware is faster, but I'm going to choose a compute capacity size that's perfect for what I'm running, my workload. And I'm going to pay just for that. So the performance of the virtual machine is faster. My storage is faster. I can make some other changes in the way my virtual private cloud or my Azure virtual cloud is working to improve traffic flow. I can use some edge or gateways to improve traffic flow. And all of a sudden, I'm getting better performance simply by going over to the cloud. And when I've looked at, you can look at the numbers and you'll see that. I can also get rid of the tape machine. Anybody using tape to back up? Well, there's still some around. Or even if you're using disk, if it's not solid state, and it's not really fast, are you saving? How are you archiving? And I know I can do information lifecycle if I get it over there. I've got it, I'm going to snap it, and then I'm going to put it in archive. And it just does that. I don't have to worry about it. When Iron Mountain wants to come and take whatever they need to take for archive, I don't have to worry about that anymore. But there are a lot of benefits if you just go lift and shift. And then when you're over there, I'm in a position where I can really help you refactor, replatform. But you've been able to exhale and say, wow, we've shown value. We're over there. We're not in the data center. Now we can really think through how we want this application to run in the cloud. So I think there's value in lift and shift. Yeah. Yes, sir?
Hello. Hello?
Yes,
Can you hear me? So you talked about being CSP agnostic. So one of the challenges that I'm actually facing is being able to present a business case, even though I know where I would like to target my platform and my modernization efforts at. I want to be able to present something that doesn't come across as favoring one vendor over the other, but I want to take advantage of the microservices and the other type of services that a particular vendor actually provides over another. Right? When I actually start to begin to write modern applications and services. So I want to take a legacy system and decouple it and modularize as possible and take advantage of things that the cloud vendor has to offer. Not sure if the question I'm asking you makes sense. How can I actually trick an executive officer with a business case that actually leads him to select the vendor that, or the cloud provider that I want to choose?
Is there any other? Well, see, that's a good question, and he was asking about if you want to use, let's say, a particular serverless technology, or even PaaS. You know, if you like Cosmos DB over another one, and so you want to go to Azure. I still focus on. I just go back to what am I looking for from the technology? What is my use case? And if I'm defining a use case, and my use case justifies a particular cloud service provider, again, based on this use case, then I'm comfortable not only talking about the use case, but explaining why this cloud service provider is the best fit for this use case, and that doesn't compromise our cloud agnostic approach. It just means in this case, I have a use case that needs these capabilities, and I can document them. It's only when it's a case where, hey, both of these would work, but I want to go over here. That's what would be an issue. But I could make that case, again, because there are benefits to that specific CSP.
So, James, thank you very much. I think we'll have plenty of questions for you during our networking, but thank you for such a great presentation.